Hi, Justin.
Hi, Devin. How are you? Thanks for your time this morning.
Thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me.
Oh,
Um,
happy to.
well, yeah, so just to start it off, what do you do and how would you describe it to someone outside of your field?
Yeah, so I'm a portfolio manager and a professional trustee at Welch and Forbes, and we are a wealth and investment management firm that's based in Boston. So mainly, Devin, what we do is we work with wealthy individuals, whether they owned a business and sold it, or maybe multi-generational assets, and we work with these families to invest their assets and plan for the known and the unknown. So maybe it's helping them plan for college or transfer assets to the next generation in a tax efficient way. And then the what ifs is, what if I were to pass unexpectedly? Who would look out for my spouse and my children, and kind of determining all those things and setting up a plan.
Okay. And so what led you to here? What led you to becoming a portfolio manager?
That's a great question. So, I think when I was a young kid, I played a lot of golf, and when you play with golf, you always kind of get paired up with random people. So I would go to the golf course, and then I would join a threesome or a twosome, and I always talked to them about their job. So I was always interested in the business aspect of it.
Okay.
And then I played with a lot of attorneys, and that was always interesting to me. But they always had billable hours. And I never liked the idea of being defined by the amount of time I put in versus the amount of value that I add.
Yeah.
So in college, we had a trust and wealth investment management program at our college, which was the only one in the country. And I was very intrigued. I took business law the first semester and immediately switched my major.
Okay. And what did you end up majoring in?
So it was trust and wealth investment management. So it's a bachelor's of business, but it's like specialized down that path.
Okay. And how did this like degree prepare you for your eventual job as portfolio manager?
So I actually think it did an excellent job preparing me. So the college had really specialized classes. So, I mentioned a little bit on the trust and estate side, but we would have classes in gift tax, estate planning, multiple investment classes and accounting classes. But the big thing I think the college was very good at was setting up with internships with major banks and trust companies. So they would come on campus and they would interview us, and it was just a really good opportunity to get into a company. And I respect these companies very much because it wasn't just your regular summer internship where you
Yeah.
may be going through files and doing that. They really kind of took you under their wing and was a day in the life, but it was more like a day in 3 months of working with trust officers and portfolio managers and a good understanding of the business.
And so what did you learn from these internships with these big companies?
Um, our business is very trust oriented, where it's I have to be able to trust you as a person because these clients are going to tell you everything about their life. Very often we work with families, and families have discrepancies, and especially when they get older, if a parent dies, and now they're two adult children, so it's very much you're being a trusted advisor to these families. So it goes beyond just what do you learn, but it's how do you act, how do you how do these families treat you? How do they understand you? Make sure that there's firewalls in between conversations. So I think that was a big part of it. It's not just, let's make these clients money so that they can, continue to be wealthy in the future. It's very much understanding what's important to them. So there's a big emotional intelligence aspect, I think, to our business, and a trust aspect. It's very much, if you're handling someone with all your assets, all your planning for the future, password, whatever,
You really
you want to be
trust
able to
them.
trust them. Yeah.
Mhm. And how do you build these trusts with these clients? Especially like say a new client comes and you take over. How do you build trust with that person?
That's it. And a great question. I think so much is it's just who you are as a person. I could tell just in the first few minutes of talking with you, you're very warm, right? And so like that's something that comes through and it's innate, it's something that can't really be taught. So I think that's it. And being a listener. I've always found that, when I first meet someone, I just try to ask them as many questions as I can. And this is both personally and professionally. And I think that's really good advice for anyone because people enjoy talking about themselves. So if you're apt to just listen, and they'll walk away and be like, that was a great conversation. And you might not have told them anything about you, but again, you learned a lot about them and you made them feel safe and secure.
Okay. Was that something that you ended up learning, or that's something that you already started off your career doing?
I think it's a mix of both. It's I think it's not like you have to be an extrovert or an introvert. I think slowly over time, as you get older, you can kind of morph into and control some of the factors. But I think it's a little bit who you are as a person, and a little bit of just over time continue putting yourself in circumstances that make you kind of have to be adaptable.
Okay. And what was like an example of like something that you ended up like working on that you and like that you started off you didn't know and you learned how to do over your time at like working?
That's a great question. I feel like a lot is maybe like fine tuned. One thing. So we also pick individual stocks and make investments for clients, and that can be something where sometimes you second guess yourself a little bit
Uh-huh.
because stock may be worth something that you believe on paper, and you do all this research, and you talk to
You
other
just, you
analysts, and
just
then
never
all of a
know.
sudden, the stock goes down 25%. So a little bit in like believing and having faith on what you see is a process, and I think it's something that you continually fine tune over time. But that's something on the emotional intelligence, like that is more innate. You can build. This is more of something that you learn and fine tune.
Okay. And I remember you talked earlier about how you wanted to be like that, like you wanted to be based on how much value you add. And so at what point did you realize that like business management or portfolio management was gonna like satisfy that want?
Uh, so I think once I really started discovering and stepping in meetings with clients, and the internships, I was already doing that because again they were so open
Hmm.
to bring you in, even though they'd be like, Justin's a summer intern, he's just listening, but you see the impact that you have with these families. So I think that that's the piece that's you can have one conversation with a client for 30 minutes about a second home, and you can advise them how to structure it so that the government doesn't take millions of dollars that they don't have to. And again, it can be a 30-minute call, and all of a sudden it can save the family big amounts of money while
Yeah.
keeping it within themselves. So I feel like that's something that is an important piece to me, but it's like you see your value add as opposed to being like, I've charged you 2 hours of time. So I've never want to put it on paper, and attorneys are very different in the way that they operate businesses. And again,
Exactly.
I want to be someone who you can call whenever you need to talk, whether
And
it's
then
5 minutes or we meet for 2 hours.
and you know that it's not going to be taking money out of your pocket.
Yeah, exactly.
That's always a good business model.
True. Yeah, you're right.
And so, what were some steps that so you started off at an internship with one of the big companies out of college? Then what did you do out of college?
So I graduated in a pretty tough time for my industry. So I graduated in 2009. So it
Oh,
was
okay.
right in the midst of the great financial crash. So shockingly, I got a job still at U.S. Trust, which is a subsidiary, or Bank of America owns them. And that was my first job. So I came on as a trust administrative officer. So I had to read a lot of trust documents. Trust documents are pretty amazing because they can be fully customized. So they're all pretty interesting. And then, just speaking to, income beneficiaries of those trusts early on. So it was very administrative, but just kind of opened my eyes even more towards the business. And then, it's just like when you call a client for the first time, even if you just have to ask a simple question, you chat about the weather, you chat
Yeah.
about sports, and you just kind of try to engage them and add a little bit of something where they can be like, oh, I enjoyed talking to Justin, even if it was just for 3 minutes. So that's something that I've kind of always tried to do and incorporate instead of just being like, where do you want your check sent?
It's a lot more soft skills that are incorporated into this business.
Oh, that's a phenomenal way to put it.
Yeah. And then also, when did you like what were some memorable points like along the way from becoming an intern to becoming like was that one of your big milestones of becoming an administrative officer at US Trust?
Uh, I would say, so I'm a certified financial planner, and I'm also a chartered financial analyst. I'd say studying for those exams, especially the CFA, the Chartered Financial Analyst, and passing all three levels on the first attempt. I was very proud of that because at the
Yeah.
time, I had a full-time job. I had moved jobs at, one point in time. Right before I had my oldest daughter, I passed my third test. So I feel like that was a big accomplishment.
Yeah.
And then, when you're younger too, it's also something that I didn't want to, I still want to enjoy life. So I was just happy that I could study, I could do well at my job while studying for these major exams and enjoying life. So I feel like that's probably what I was happiest about as far as, I've been happy about my jobs. I really love where I am now. But I think that was a major accomplishment that I'm very, very happy I was able to do.
Yeah. Congratulations on passing it all on the first attempt.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. I'm proud of myself too.
And so are you direct, so do you, when you are bringing someone onto the team, are you directly involved within the hiring process?
So it very much depends. So our company only has 55 people,
Okay.
and the portfolio managers work individually with one person to support their book of business, and then us as portfolio managers work together as teams to cover and study investments. So there's kind of and then there's a whole business aspect where it's like operations and compliance. So I would say sometimes I'm involved in the hiring process. And if it's ever intimately involved in me or the investment management side, I am. And that part I find pretty interesting because, similar to what you're doing today, you get to ask the questions.
Yeah.
A resume can sell one thing, but I think you can learn more from
In
speaking with
person.
someone for 5 to 10 minutes than I could a resume any day of the
Yeah.
week.
Yeah, because especially that in-person connection, and you can really feel that, oh, is this person gonna treat their coworkers nice, or they're gonna like be obnoxious.
Oh, exactly. We don't want that.
Yeah. And when you step into the office, what is a like a typical or normal day look like?
So usually I try to read up either, on the Wall Street Journal. I'm a big reader of The Economist. I try to do all that stuff kind of before I come in, seeing what the markets are doing, and then just start looking at emails. So the big is, because we work with individual clients and their families, clients reach out to us often. Sometimes a quick question, sometimes asking for meetings, but it's kind of like setting the day up, how I see it fit. So I'm a big list maker. I find that it's easiest for me, and I may have a mind that goes in 90 different ways. But when I make lists and I cross stuff off the list, I get so much accomplished and it helps me not push stuff off.
Yeah.
I feel like, especially being you, and in ninth grade, you get it where it's like, well, I have this stuff to do, but I can do it later.
Yeah.
And when you have work, it's very much like if you can just start banging out projects fast and just start accomplishing things, I think that's a good way to start the day. So I'd say once I get in the office, I work through very often I made a list the prior night before and I start kind of going through the other stuff I have to do and then just start, working on that list. And um, it also depends if I'm hosting meetings that day, whether in person or on Zoom calls, because there'll be some preparational aspects involved. But that's kind of how it goes. I would say in our world, every day is kind of different. If the market has been as wild as it has last week, there may even be morning meetings just to kind of get an idea of what we may be seeing or opportunities in the market.
Like a game plan.
Um, yeah, yeah. What's the game plan? And this market's kind of had an interesting one for us. So
Mhm. And so, how often do you interact with the clients or these families?
so ideally, and it's all different, Devin, because I have some clients that it's just maybe them, or maybe and they don't have any kids, or maybe it's them and their spouse and they don't have any kids, and then there's others where our firm has been managing their assets for 50 years, so there may be a
Wow.
matriarch or a patriarch. And then there's two of their children, but the children may be in their 60s or 70s, and then there's grandkids. So it's all different. But ideally, the way that I like to say is I like to have a set meeting in person every year. And that way we can kind of start from the top. Here's how the account did. Here's our planning. Here's what we need to accomplish. And then after that, they can reach out to me whenever they see fit, of course, but maybe one other year and check in. But I feel it's important to have meetings in person.
Yeah.
You talked about kind of that soft skills piece. And, with where Zoom has gone, COVID was obviously a different period of time, but people don't really have as much interaction being like, oh, what are your kids' activities? Like, what are they into? The things that either the first 20 minutes of a meeting or 30 minutes of a meeting or the last 30 minutes of the meeting would normally go. But, with Zoom, sometimes it's like, oh, we hit the hour. Nice seeing you.
Yeah.
So I very much at least try to see the clients once a year. If not, because they're a lot are all over the country. I have some clients in the UK. So maybe every other year. But I do try to make it a point to be every year.
That's a good system. And apart from the to-do list and the list and the checking off, which is feels always very accomplishing, what other like routines or habits that you've like established at your career that's really helped you? Like I know you talked briefly about like reading the news in the morning, and that's very good because you get a like get a little background knowledge of how what the markets are doing. But like other than those two, what are some important impacts for you?
So, I don't know if everyone would agree with this, but I very much like to have lunch out. So I don't pack my lunch. I try to set up lunch meetings with friends, maybe old colleagues I used to work with, maybe people in my own company. I just think it's important to take a break. I'm a big foodie and I love eating delicious food at lunch. And I, even though it might be $20 at this point in time, I think it's a good use of funds. But it also gives you an opportunity to meet with your friends because, similarly to clients, you don't want that stuff to fall through the cracks. Like in order to keep friendships for a long period of time, you have to continually interact. You have to put in the work. So I feel like if I go in the office 3 to 4 days a week and I have 3 to 4 opportunities to see people, it opens up my calendar to say, I know you may live outside the city, but let me know a day when you're coming in and we'll grab lunch, something like that. So
Yeah.
I think that that's something that may not be a routine, but something that I've kind of always incorporated. As much as in my head I say, I could probably save $20 a day or something by bringing lunch. I just find it to be such not only a fun activity, but it's also a lift you up activity. When you haven't
It's
seen
like a
someone in a
little,
long time.
it's like a little escape from the mundane activities of the office.
Ah, exactly. And Boston has great lunch options. They definitely changed after COVID, but I feel like they're coming back and thriving.
Nice, yeah. And so are there ever like big deadlines or something when you're for clients?
Yeah. So I wouldn't say most of my deadlines would be like prior to meetings, just getting everything set up.
Okay.
And they all range the gamut. I have some clients that may just have one account with me. I have some clients that may have five trust accounts, individual accounts, retirement accounts. So I'd say, and I have colleagues that will like help me prepare everything, but more it's a good understanding of what needs to be accomplished beforehand. And some of that may have to be with, setting up estate plans, editing those estate plans, those types of procedures. But I don't really have a ton of deadlines outside of that, I'd say.
Okay.
But there's always deadlines. If a client reaches out to you, I always try to get back to them within 24 hours just because, they're tasking us and trusting us to invest their assets. So I think it's important if they have a question to answer it.
Yeah.
So
And
it's constant deadlines.
yeah. And how do you deal with like difficult clients?
I love that's a fantastic question. I think a thing that I've tried to do, and we've all had different clients or customers in our life, but sometimes it's important to put yourself in their shoes, and maybe see what they're seeing that you're not understanding. The other thing that I think is important is also respecting your boundaries as a professional. And if they're not the right client, then maybe you have to take different paths. Because we're all here to be treated professionally. And if you're not getting that same respect, then it's not worth pursuing the relationship. So I think the other side of it too is um, just again like looking back at maybe what they're not understanding and setting expectations.
Okay.
So sometimes you may have clients that just will reach out and send 4 emails over the weekend because they're panicking about the market. And you can sit back and say, okay, why are they panicking? Do they have a reason to panic? Should we make adjustments to the portfolio so they don't have to panic? Or can I just call them before noon on Monday and just say, hi, Donna, don't worry, you're going to be okay. We've seen this volatility before. We're going to ride it out. You're invested for the long term. We've prepared for this kind of volatility, and your portfolio can withstand any downturns. But so I see it both ways. But a big thing is, with clients that are tough, I think the idea of setting expectations, just because time is worth money as well. So you can't constantly be having to address the same issues with the same people.
Okay. And what is one piece of advice that you have known like before you joined the workforce?
Like if I had a crystal ball,
Yeah, or like if you could like see the future, what would you have done differently?
I probably would have bought a bunch of Nvidia stock, back when in 2009. Um, what would I have done differently?
If anything at all.
Yeah, I don't really know if there's, um, I think for the most part, I'm pretty glad to see where my career has progressed to. I really enjoy where I'm at now. I think our market is incredibly fragmented, because there's people that have their own companies that manage people's assets. There's trust companies, there's banks, there's RIAs, there's broker dealers. So we all play in different types of the market, but I think ours is very kind of niche as we work, as I mentioned, a little bit on the trust and estate side as well. So very often it's either multi-generational assets or people that sold the business and now they're preparing a legacy for themselves. So um, I don't know. I'd say off the top of the head, I can't really think of anything I drastically change as far as my career path. I think maybe if I graduated, 10 years earlier, I think coming into a field that's known for certain things, and all of a sudden you come in and the bank just got bailed out by the government. It kind of changes things a little bit, but obviously that was kind of completely out of our control.
Okay. And if you had to give one piece of advice for someone entering the business world or entering the world of portfolio management, what would that one piece of advice be?
On a high level, I think networking is incredibly important, right? What you're doing today, like using your network and reaching out to people, I think it's going to continue to benefit you into perpetuity. I think working on kind of soft skills and you know right out of the gates, then I can tell that you can talk to people that are older than you. You can talk to adults, but these types of things are extremely important. Whether it's looking someone in the eyes, having like a good firm handshake, like these are all important things. So I think the networking piece is very important, and then just maybe finding other things that could help you get into different networks. So whether that's golf or something like squash or just things that can kind of create a bigger area that you can get to know more people. I think that's important. And always setting, good impressions. So being respectful of people, thankful, being very polite, which is all things that, would seem obvious, but it's very reflective. So I'd say that those are kind of the main things and takeaways that you'd want if you'd look to get into this industry.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Justin, for taking the time with me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Devin. It was a pleasure, and thank you so much. Good luck on your project.
Thank you. All right, have a nice day.
All right, take care.